This is Vaughn Clement, and this is a web-based IWP application named CRM PM 5.0. This is going to be a tour of this application. This is the front end of the application, meaning it is the part where you entrance into the application. And this is an advanced appointment calendar that will show day, week, month, year, and a list of all appointments, a selectable calendar, and anything that has to do with expired appointments. This is also a multi-user application where you can have a number of different users. In this case, there's some sample people in there. You can add as many as you need to. And as you add them in here, you're also giving them user rights for access with a password and username. This application uses a linear or line-based row for each appointment. And the way you start an appointment is to click on the plus sign, and then it'll add a new version of a item listed. You will be editing this in a different screen where you will add information to it. And then on the second half of the application, the CRM and PM 5.0 application for project management and proposals will be entered into and add information over there. So let's start by looking at the application. It has a full, complete help for information on how to use the calendar part of the app. Anything that is not the same as that, I will be telling you about so that you will have no questions about how that works. Okay. By clicking on the calendar here, which it shows the date in green for the current date and the date at the top, you go ahead and to add a new record. And by the way, this tour is only going to be a brief overview. I'm not going to try to do all of the details. But let's go in and look and edit or view an appointment. When we edit or view an appointment, what we're looking at is a different screen that is a new appointment when it opens up. You would type in the information in this area. You would add the type, in this case, an action item, activity, deliverable, event, meeting, or proposal, or a task. Any of those, and then it has its own separate icon. You would assign a priority by just changing. You would add the date that it starts, the finish date, the start time, and finish time. You can also do this over a span of time. For example, in this case, it started on the 18th and finished on the 27th. And that would be a duration in the calendar on a day-to-day basis for the period of time. So it started on 2:30 on the 18th and finishes at 1 p.m. on the 27th. In this area here, you can add additional users, as you do in the first screen. There's a add user screen where you give usernames and password for people in your company. You could fill this area, and as you assign, for example, in this case, the administrator is signing in and adding the content. Each individual person that might have some requirements in this would get a checkbox, and their individual calendars on the main screen would display their requirements and their appointments that they're related to. Down here is an area where you put descriptions of this appointment. There's a multi-line portal where you can add comments on a running basis. There is also a sub-task where if you create a task here for this particular event or appointment, it will add a sub-task on another date and time, and then you can edit that as well to add additional information. And then there's also a workload log where you can document anything that has to do with the pre-proposal or meetings and everything leading up to the proposal phase where you go through appointments. That would be entered here, and it would be reflected by each different appointment. You would have different information you can put in there if it's still related to the same effort. In addition, you can also put work hours in that you expended in each process moving up to being able to start a proposal, and also what was occurring in whatever effort you did up to that point. Okay, that's a slight overview of what's going on in this particular screen. I would suggest when you start to use this app that you use the help to get a full-scale idea of what this application does. Now, let's talk about the project and proposal section. I've added a client, and in this case, there's a few clients in here. Basically, what you do is when you're in this area, If you have clients, you can pick them. They have numeric numbers for IDs. And for example, you just click on it and it changes this screen. And this is actually coming out of the client record where you can add data. If I go back to a different record, you can see that it brings over the text information from that screen. These fields are not editable, but the notes are, and you can make changes here, and it will update them over on the proposal and project side of the application. Let's go to the next section, which is if you haven't created a user yet, as far as the client is concerned, a customer record, you would go ahead and click on either this arrow here to go to this client, or you would add a new client by going into the customer listing and then go into any record over here and click on new record to add a new blank record, and then you can start adding data to that where you have the information for this particular client. You can see that I've only got a few clients in here as sample records, so you can learn how to use the application. At the end of the application tour, where you actually go in and just do a brief walkthrough using the user guide, you would come back in and then overwrite these names and addresses. For example, if I wanted to change Mr. Jones to something else, I would just go ahead and take his name out. And as you can see, it'll update, and that's how you would overwrite the records. You could put a different address in for all the samples and all the other information in the sample records. This application has what is called a modal window, and what this means is that this application uses a window where you have to come back to the original window and close out in the appointment screen that we just left. And as you move through any other screens in here, you would come back to this screen and then exit through the new appointment screen. Okay, in this app also there is a submit. If you're on the server, you want to submit any record that you make edit changes with, or cancel if you put in information and you decided you don't want to save that information. Just click cancel and it reverts to what you originally had put into the application. There is a tabbed interface at the top of the screen. These are different tabs. For example, there's a location screen that uses the address information from the record you just entered, and it brings up MapQuest, where it shows the exact location. You can get directions and other things in MapQuest. The next one is additional information, where there's a UDF field at the bottom. This is information that came from the original screen. UDFs are where you put a title for a field, and then you can enter information about that titled item, 3 fields wide and an infinite number of fields long. You can also now go to the proposal track, where if you put in a proposal and created it, you would go ahead and add the title name for it, the date you started the proposal, put in a proposal number, the date you're supposed to deliver the proposal, the person you're going to send it to, and an estimated value for that quote for that proposal. You can create as many proposals for this customer as you want to in this record, so if they come back, you would just be re-entering and adding more customers. The proposal track also has a link that goes over to the project side of the application, where you do the bid and proposal effort as far as doing the numerics of all the values that are proposed in the work breakdown structure. Over here, this is on the CRM side of this application for the client, where you have an activity. And an activity is a small scale thing like making phone calls, writing emails, and picking up documents or sending them out, those kinds of small tasks that you do. This is for meetings, where you're documenting all the meetings, and these are all infinite portals where you can put as many things in there for this particular project as you need to. Then the last one is action track, where you're assigning either from a meeting or a phone call some actions to either people in your company or things that you're having the other company do, or a vendor for action items. Each one of these screens, both activity track, meeting track, and action track, have a printable screen that can be either emailed or printed and sent to employees, or sent over to the company that you're doing work for as reference for the things that you're doing. And again, these have submit and cancels in these. Let's jump over now and look at the menu bar. There's a menu bar on the screen. This is an ad hoc place where you can come in and see all the different screens, and all you have to basically do is click on them. We're going to make a jump over to the other side of the app, where we're going to do proposal track. And you can see when you come over here, Instead of having the name of the client, now you have the proposal number that you created on the other side of the app. And what you're going to be doing is costing this proposal, where you take any notes up here about the process of setting up the proposal, and then the actual requirements, maybe from an RFP or a letter of understanding, where you document all the items that you're going to have to do in order to meet the proposal requirements. In this particular case, there's still tabs on this screen. You would go to the WBS breakdown, where you create like an outline layout. You can use whatever numerics you want to. In this case, it's 1.0. And if you do a 1.1 or a 2.0, each one of these is a separate costing element, meaning that as you do the costing for this at the top level numbers, and there's also some UDF fields over here where you can title them yourself and put in different things. Each one of these would cost up in total by itself. If you did another WBS item, that would be costed up to the total, but they'd be individually set up. So if you had to edit these, you could edit the individual items based on whatever the work breakdown structure described and what work is in the proposal to be done. The next step in this is to take the project budget and either load it all with one margin account and come out with a total, or take each individual part of the proposal and load the margin individually based on what your individual parts of your company can bear, and then see the totals in cost and price, where this is a profit of $1,635. It came from $5,450, and it ended up by being $7,085. If you do individual costing in this area, it would show the basic cost, the margin, and then the total over here. So you can actually have two different prices if you want to, based on what if looks at what you want to do. This area down here is for labor, where you take and do the labor for each individual person that's going to be working on the project. And you're basically taking a quote from whoever's doing the work in your company as far as labor is concerned. As far as other project costs, this is travel expenses, labor, materials, equipment, subcontract, services, expenses. And then you have UDF fields that you see over in this area that you would be the funds that you're expending for this on any one day. So you're doing a constant update here on a day-to-day basis, or whatever you want to run it, as far as the actual costs. The gray fields here would be the actual costs. These are the bid costs from the proposal at cost level. So as you're adding the actuals, you can see if you're on budget, and you can also see if you're on time as far as the date schedule for people doing work. There are charts included in this application. For example, here's a flow chart with the expended amount as far as the total budget, and then the expenses that have been set up and run to this point in time. There are other charts in the application for different purposes, like labor has their own, and there is another one for cost items. This is an area where you would put vendor data in as far as catching costs, or consultant information as far as expenses. These are other item costs. It may be something where you have to buy something outside your company, either a service, an outside service, or some kind of a function that you don't do, but you will be costing separately from your own side of the company. There is a web viewer in case you actually have to go online and copy and paste information into the application. And that is used in conjunction with the data viewer, where in the data viewer, if you copy a URL from any place and put it in here, it'll take you to whatever website you list here. And if it's going to be a picture or something that you're going to be bringing in from a location and you're on the server, you can insert a picture or a graphic by clicking this button if there's a URL up there for it. There is a application called FM Go. If you use FM Go, within this place you can copy and paste directly into the container field any graphic. There is a better description of this in the user guide as far as how this functions, so I request you to look at the user guide. This is the tour of the application, and I would really like you to use the user guide to get additional information and detail. Thank you for taking this tour.